Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 4, Watcher. Well, we begin this episode with Rafi and Seven going to the clinic where they last tracked Rios's comm badge, and they're told by a clinic worker that Ice picked him up and has taken him away. And with Picard and Agnes, they're waiting on the auto repair to fix the ship. Agnes apparently is cold because the heat isn't on. I guess with the auto repair, the Confederation ships are equipped with upgrades. At least I guess that's what Picard told her, which seemed a little bit strange to me. I don't know why you would call it an upgrade if it's a ship from an alternate timeline. I mean, I guess it's upgrades from what the Federation has in the regular timeline.
How does auto repair work on a ship like that? I mean, is it some sort of weird nanite thing like that programmable matter stuff? I mean, what exactly does auto repair do? It probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's just one of those things that these CBS shows do is they introduce stuff that, if you remember last season, remember that little device they had that could do whatever you wanted in the Picard series?
Yeah, it was like the programmable matter. I referred to it as the Harry Potter magic wand.
Yeah, and this seems like this is more of that.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It's just to shrug my shoulders. But I don't know. If the ship's auto repairing, then that means that I guess that explains why everybody's out doing something and they're just kind of messing around.
Well, nobody has to fix the ship then. You don't need a Scotty who knows what he's doing to get the engines up and running, you know?
But Agnes is supposed to be she's boosting the radio, which I guess it's not radio, boosting the communication device.
Yeah.
And fixing the transporter somehow. How come that fixing the transporter is not in the auto repair stuff too?
I don't know. I mean, one would think so, but I guess they had to give Agnes something to do. So that was it. I was right when I said that where they crashed that ship, Chateau Picard, and sure enough, that's exactly where they crashed the ship.
Yep.
Inside the chateau, it's all run down because nobody's living there right now. Picard was having a memory of being afraid when he was a kid, and it was just really weird. And even weirder still, Agnes, she said to him, she called him Mr., which, are you okay, Mr.? It was very strange. Like, why is she calling him Mr.?
I thought last episode she did that too.
I think she did, and in the previous episode, at one point, he called her daughter. So it's like, what in the hell is this? Is this some sort of alluding to something that's coming in the future, in a different episode? I don't know, but it was strange. And, of course, he's trying to tell Agnes to relax, and then she says something like, calculus is relaxing.
The power of math, people. I'm a very smart person, and I'm very, very smart, and I'm going to make sure you know that.
So this is really the Tilly of Picard.
We said last episode, she's Tilly 2.0, and she's Tilly 2.0.
Yeah. And the number 15 kept coming up. That was stupid, because apparently it's Agnes's subconscious trying to get the number 15 out there, and she got that from when she was connected to the Borg Queen. So they surmise that they have 3 days, because it's the 12th, they have 3 days to try to avert whatever goes wrong in the timeline.
That whole thing with the 15, and I realize I understand in the narrative about her subconscious was letting this drip through, but there was an episode of The Next Generation where the Enterprise kept getting destroyed and they kept going through these time loops, and in the end, the way it was solved was Data in one of the iterations, no, it was Geordi in one of the iterations, somehow got Data's positronic brain, basically his subconscious, to keep putting up the number 3 through everything. So the episode, they kept having the same events happen like 3 or 4 times. And in that last iteration, Data kept doing things that had the number 3, whether they were playing poker or doing whatever. And the 3 in that case was supposed to be the number of pips on Riker's uniform, because there was at the end of the day, they had to make a decision on how to avoid hitting the ship. In every other iteration, they went with somebody else's suggestion, but this final iteration, the 3 was supposed to be listen to Commander Riker. So again, the story wasn't the same, But that whole subconscious thing with a number being something that matters, that reminded me of that particular episode.
Something else that I noticed that keeps coming up is this Europa mission. In the previous episode, there was a billboard about the Europa mission. In this episode, it was on the side of a bus. Also, at the very end of the episode, we're going to see Q wearing a patch for the Europa mission. So who knows what that's going to be and how that's related to everything, but that keeps coming up now in 2 episodes in a row.
Yeah, when we were watching the last episode, you pointed that out a couple of times. I think you saw it. And it's like, well, for this series, we assume that means something. But when we saw it on Q's jacket, we knew, this apparently is going to be a thing. So
it has to mean something.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then why the hell are they doing it?
Why would Q wear that? So,
exactly.
Yeah, so I agree. That must be somehow tied to this event that changed the timeline, is what I'm thinking.
Yep. And there is a bus scene where Seven and Rafi are riding the bus, and there's some punk rock guy playing punk music. He's playing it too loud, so Rafi tells him to turn it down, and he does and apologizes, which is very similar to what happened in Star Trek 4.
That's the same actor.
Yeah.
So I realized it was a cameo, and so we're supposed to nod, wink. But like in the movie, he basically turned it up and said, he flipped off Spock and Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, Seven's like, could you please turn that down? And this guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'll turn it down. I just really like that song. So he was not the angry punk rocker anymore. I mean, yeah, that's a member berry, but I'm willing to give them that member berry because that was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, and if that was the only thing that they did, then, you know what? It would have been entertaining,
mm-hmm.
amusing even. But because of how many pieces that they're using from Star Trek 4, like Rios getting captured like Chekhov was after getting injured.
Taking him to the hospital, or in this case, the clinic.
Yeah, exactly. So they're borrowing too much, and that's rubbing me the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, Seven and Rafi are trying to locate Rios, and Picard is going after the Watcher. So, he finds himself on Forward Avenue, where 10 Forward was in his real timeline in the future. And, of course, Guinan is in there. It's her bar. This version of Guinan, they have a different actress playing her, not Whoopi Goldberg. She just felt wrong, because the way she delivered her lines just didn't feel like how Guinan has been portrayed in all of The Next Generation.
I mean, the one thing that I noticed is there was an exchange between them two. She said something like, well, you're not the kind of person that usually comes in here, in a suspicious tone of voice. Like, almost angry suspicious. And, you and I were talking a bit while the scene was going on, and it's like, that doesn't feel like Guinan. I think Guinan might have said that same line, but she would have said something like, oh, you're not the normal kind of person that comes in here, in a way to kind of like say, I want to hear more about why you're in here. Because Guinan to me always seemed like a very inquisitive type character.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I mentioned when we were watching this, and where I think this actress just wasn't the right fit, is Whoopi Goldberg's portrayal of Guinan. If I had to describe what Guinan was, her portrayal, it was a strong character, but the character wasn't physically strong. I mean, she might have been. I don't know. I don't think we ever saw her doing any feats of strength, but she was strong of character. She was very confident, a calm confidence inside of her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was assured of herself. At least she always seemed that way to me. She just seemed like she was an inquisitive type person, and she was just very confident, but in a very quiet way. And this lady that was playing this character was like the exact opposite. She was kind of standoffish and angry, and she just seemed like she lacked confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she pulled a gun on Picard. This old man. I mean, she looked like she could have taken him easily in a fight, and she pulled a gun on him.
That's the thing, too. I mean, if the people who are writing this, somebody left them notes and said, Guinan, a strong female character. And so they got somebody who, stature-wise, was a physically intimidating person. Because this lady, she was pretty solid. I mean, she had some arms on her and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I were talking during the watching. This actress, I think, would have made a better Michael Burnham than Sonequa Martin Green, given how they wrote Michael Burnham.
Yeah.
And this character, the actress they got, it just didn't seem like she was the right fit for playing Guinan, at least for me. She was a very physically intimidating person, and she had that anger, standoffish, insecure type demeanor to her. And all those things are like the exact opposite of what Whoopi Goldberg's Guinan was.
Yeah.
To me, anyway. I mean, maybe somebody else interpreted her differently.
Well, she didn't come across as the perennial bartender.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, that's what Guinan was. She always had a listening ear.
Mm-hmm.
Like your stereotypical bartender. This lady, I can see people making an argument that she is getting ready to leave the planet because the shit's about to hit the fan. But at the same time, I feel like Guinan would have handled that with more poise than was given to this incarnation of her.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but I always remembered, at least I do now, that Guinan was like an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
And one could argue maybe earlier in her life she wasn't. But this person who was here was a pessimist. And some could argue, well, right, the events that are getting ready to happen are going to turn her into an optimist. But lots of people are talking about that Next Generation episode, Time's Arrow, with Mark Twain, and how this breaks canon for that. And I'm not sure I agree with that, because if the timeline split off in 2024, then it's possible that the Next Generation people never went back in time, so Picard never met Guinan. So that part, I'm willing to say, doesn't necessarily break canon if this timeline splits. But we did get to see Guinan back in the Mark Twain days. She was the Whoopi Goldberg Guinan. She was still an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
She was still all those things that I consider to be Guinan. So I would have expected her character, which was before the timeline split in 2024, to be that same type of character. And this actress just wasn't playing it that way.
Yeah.
But that might just be my interpretation of Guinan's character. Maybe other people interpret her character differently. But this actress was miscast, and her portrayal of the character was just wrong. And I blame the directors for that, because they could have directed her to play the character a little bit differently.
Yeah, because when you deliver your lines, intonation matters.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have told her to do this differently, and they didn't. So, yeah, director's fault, definitely.
One last thing. I don't understand the inside joke of 10 Forward here. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong here. It's been a while since I've watched The Next Generation. But I thought the reason it was called 10 Forward in The Next Generation is because it was on deck 10 of the forward part of the ship.
I thought that too.
And if that's the case, in the first episode of this season, when he met old Guinan, and he's old Picard, and she's on Forward Avenue, address 10, okay, that's kind of a ha-ha funny joke.
Mm-hmm.
But why would she in 2024, how does Forward Avenue and the number 10 mean anything to her in 2024?
Well, I mean, one could say maybe because she's time sensitive, maybe she was just attracted to that.
Yeah, maybe.
That's how I would explain it away if I was the writer on this. So, but yeah, I agree with you. That just seemed like it was a sloppy thing to do, writing-wise.
It was a member berry that didn't need to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
He could have found Guinan somewhere else in the past, in 2024.
Yeah. So, Seven and Rafi leave the clinic and go to the LAPD looking for Rios. And of course there's a guy there that tells them, no, you actually need ice, and you'll have to find out where he's been taken. They break into a police car out in the parking lot and use that to find out where Rios is. And then ultimately they steal it because, they steal the car because the transporter's still not working on their ship. So there is now a police chase with Seven driving a stolen police car.
And she can drive the thing very well, by the way, which I don't understand how she can do that, because you would think that an old school automobile would be something very odd to her. And I remember from the original series when Kirk and Spock were on that mobster planet and he had to drive a car and it took him a while to get used to it. Granted, that one wasn't a manual transmission versus this being an automatic, but I just would have expected her to struggle more with how this vehicle worked. But again, that's a minor thing. You could argue maybe Seven had some background driving vehicles like this. So I'm not going to say that was a horrible thing. It's just that whole car chase thing that happened when they're in that police car. Oh my God, that dragged on forever. And it didn't add anything useful to the story.
Yep. Meanwhile, Rios is in a cage in an ice facility, and he's...
As we predicted.
Yeah.
Last episode, we made the joke about, oh, they didn't show him in a cage. Maybe they're not going to do that. Nope, they did exactly that.
Oh, yeah, they totally did it this time. He's not showing proper deference to the officer there. So what does the officer go and do? He tases him.
This completely obnoxious, overbearing officer.
Yeah.
And again, I understand ICE deporting people. I get the sensitive topic. But this was a mustache-twirling villain that this ICE guy was. He was like picking a fight almost.
Yeah, and you know what? From what I can tell, this version of ICE is much more efficient than anything we have in real life.
Yep.
Because they picked him up, and within not long, seems like within an hour, they were already sticking him on a bus and, I don't know, taking him to dump in Mexico? I'm not sure.
Well, that was the joke,
Down at the border, I guess they're going to be keeping him locked up.
Because it's like, well, they don't know where he's from, so what do? Just kind of dump him over the border in Mexico and say, you deal with it?
I don't know. I think maybe I think what they said was they were taking him to a holding facility down by the border.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, oh, God. It just... Again, their portrayal of the homeless problem in this episode was very clean compared to what reality really is.
Mm-hmm.
Their portrayal of the police station, I've never seen such a clean, orderly police station in my life. The prison or lockup or wherever he was, again...
At the detention center.
The detention center, okay.
Well, it was those cages.
Yeah.
It was those cages... This is the second episode where they've spent time on this stuff. All of these threads, these plots that they have going on, most of them, I should say, they're tying back to this, because even Guinan was like, oh, humanity seems like this lost cause, and she's like looking out into like the homeless situation and that. I don't understand what they're trying to do here. I truly hope that they have a better idea than Orange Man bad being the problem, but we'll see.
I have a feeling that's exactly the direction this is going.
She even, who mentioned about, was it Guinan, about bad people wear suits now or something like that?
Yes. Guinan said, in this century, they take off the hood and put on a suit.
And again, I'm not trying to read into this. They're making it hard for me not to. But it just seems like they're setting up a Donald Trump character here. A businessman in a suit is the new Klan, and that's what's going to be the fascist that's going to cause the downfall of humanity.
Well, at least I'll give Guinan some credit because she did say that there's a group of people who control everything and have more than they need, but they don't want to give anything up, and that's why everything's all screwed up.
Yeah, and it didn't come across as partisan. She was just saying people who have the money and power to fix this could, but they don't.
Exactly. So at least there's one thing that they said that made sense, that didn't come across like it was utterly tone deaf, because they actually spoke one grain of truth in this.
Yep, that was a good line.
Yeah.
But it was one good line.
One. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, the guard is asking Rios what his name is, so, or who he is. The guard asked Rios who he is, so Rios told him the truth, all about the Federation and being from the future and everything. I don't know if that was supposed to be funny. It wasn't, but it kind of seemed like it was supposed to be.
Well, like the writers they were very impressed with themselves, because when Rafi and Seven were in the police car and they were having this banter back and forth, that was also, it seemed like writers trying to be overly clever with the banter that wasn't funny or interesting in any way.
Yeah.
And this was the same thing.
Yep.
I think it was supposed to be funny that he was telling where he was actually from, but I don't know. This episode has made me rethink the positive things I said about this series for the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, the episode before this and this episode, not very good at all.
No.
Agnes is trying to fix the transporter, and she can't do it fast enough. So she turns to the Borg Queen for help. I guess she promised to spend time with the Borg Queen or something. And so the Borg Queen consents to fixing the transporter. Agnes beams Seven and Rafi out of the cop car just as the cops are holding guns on them, telling them to get out of the car. They're beamed toward where Rios's bus is going to be, and they're going to have to hijack the bus in order to get Rios off of it. Guinan is about to just leave and not help Picard, so he reveals his real name to Guinan, and she... apparently that meant something to her, and so she says that she'll put him in touch with a Watcher. She apparently is not the Watcher. So they go to a park, and this little girl comes up to him with her eyes all white. She starts leading him somewhere, and Guinan leaves. Then the white eyes jump to, like, this hot dog vendor, I think. And then after that, it jumps to somebody else. I mean, it keeps jumping body to body. And it was a lot like the agents in the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, he gets to where the Watcher is, and it's Laris. I don't know if this is just some being that is using Laris's likeness to put Picard at ease, or if Laris actually is the Watcher. That would be an interesting twist if they do that.
If it turns out that Laris from his present timeline was the same entity, just with a Romulan spin to them, that's going to be disappointing.
We'll see what they do. I mean, I'm sure whatever they do is going to be disappointing anyway, so this... I'm sure it's going to turn out to be crap. So, the Borg Queen is now expecting Agnes to spend time with her, and Agnes isn't going to. She basically decides to just leave.
Yeah, the thing with that, Agnes and the Borg Queen, all those scenes, because they kept... all these different plot lines you're discussing, they were jumping between them through the entire episode.
Yeah.
The Queen was trying to toy with Agnes, kind of like Hannibal Lecter did in Silence of the Lambs, except this was cringy. And I think, because the Borg are used to being in a collective and not being alone,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the deal that was being made, was... the Borg Queen wasn't going to admit it, but Agnes knew this was something that she wanted because of the exchange they had during that partial assimilation,
Mm-hmm.
is that the Borg Queen actually was lonely, and so Agnes promised that she would spend time with her and exchange stories so that she wouldn't be alone anymore. So I think that's what that was about. And I'm not sure Agnes is going to refuse to do it, period. But toward the end of the episode, she had her fill for right then and there. I think she was just trying to tell the Borg Queen, I've got some power here and I can walk away, and I know this bothers you because you don't like being alone.
Yeah.
That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, it was a total power play. At the very end of the episode, there is a scene with Q. He's got the Europa badge on. It looks like he's trying to manipulate a woman reading a book, except he snaps his fingers and nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
So Q appears to be losing his power, or appears to have lost his power, maybe, I don't know. And that was the end of the episode.
Yep.
I'm not sure I really have much else to say about this episode, other than what I've said so far. Do you have anything?
I mentioned this during our watching. All of this ice stuff, all of this, these people behind the show are trying to make a statement about the injustice that's happening right now. And they don't understand how allegory works.
No, they don't.
So what I saw them trying to do, I mentioned to you, I asked you if you remember that Star Trek Continues episode,
Mm-hmm.
where coincidentally enough, John Delancey was in it.
Yep.
Where this planet, because of this radiation that was coming off of the sun, I guess, it stripped all the colors out of the light. So everybody on the planet saw each other in black and white.
Yep.
And there were these two races that were kind of fighting each other, and the one was treated poorly and they were exported. Their version of ice would kick them off the planet if they found them and so forth. And the episode itself was called What Ships Are For. And then at the end of the episode, the sunlight was changed so that colors happened. And then was it orange and purple? They had different color skins. It was easy to tell in color what the deal was. In fact, John Delancey's character, he was married to the opposite race of what he is, and that was a problem. And that was an allegory, and they talked about setting up their version of a wall because they had a armada of ships surrounding their planet so that the refugees from this one planet couldn't get in. And it was an allegory. I'm not saying you can't cover these topics, but Star Trek does these in allegory. I don't know what they're doing right now with what they're doing in 2024. Our political system, our political setup in this country it's a tinderbox. It only needs a couple of matches to get the thing going. And doing stuff like this without doing allegory, all this is doing is making it worse. You're not healing anybody. You're not bringing awareness to anybody. All you're doing is ticking off people.
Yeah.
And this is making it worse. These people behind the scenes who are making this, who think they're making something to make the world better, they're actually making it worse. And I wish they would understand how allegory works, because these messages they're sending, if done in allegory, could be acceptable if done a certain way.
Yep. But
they're not. They're doing it right in your face. That's why if they end up having some orange man in a suit being the 2024 problem and why everybody's in cages and why all the homeless people are there, other than shrugging my shoulders, I don't know what to say. It just confirms this is propaganda. And these people should not be in charge of anything who are behind the show. I hope they don't do that. I hope that they surprise me. But I would have done this stuff in allegory and not what they're doing, trying to make it quote unquote real life.
Yep.
So that's my ending take on this, is these past 2 episodes have felt very preachy, very cringy. They've taken on elements of Star Trek Discovery, and that's not a good thing, by the way, in case somebody hasn't followed our channel. Discovery is the low bar for what you do not want to get the Discovery Award, because that's a award you do not want. It's not there yet, but it's getting very, very close, and they need to stop it with this ice stuff. They need to stop that. I'm not saying that's not important, but you didn't do it in allegory, and you're ham-fisting it like Discovery does things. Stop doing that. You're making it worse. You're not covering the topic in any sort of useful way. Go back to your original plot of what broke the timeline, and let's go moving toward that and see if they came up with an idea that's not cringy.
Yeah.
The best part of this episode, even though I didn't like her portrayal of Guinan, I think that actress they got who played Guinan, if given a different role, I think she could be okay. I mean,
yeah,
she
definitely.
She kind of has a certain look to her, and like I said, she's a kind of a physically intimidating person. I think she could have played a different role and actually pretty well.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they found the actress. I don't know if she's been in much else, but I'm glad they found her. I just didn't think she was a good fit for Guinan.
No.
So that's all I have to say about this.
Yep, that's all I have to say about that. So, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment. And now we only have one more to go to get caught up.
We're trying really hard to get caught up.
Ugh.
Take care.